In this video, you will watch a summary of the AWS DevOps Engineer Professional Certification Guide, by Sumit Kapoor. Specifically, you will watch a summary of Chapters 4 to 14. Chapter 4, Infrastructure as Code Using Cloud Formation. Overview. This chapter focuses on AWS CloudFormation, which enables Infrastructure as Code, IAC. It teaches how to automate the provisioning and management of AWS resources using templates. Key topics: CloudFormation nested stacks, modularizing templates for better reusability. Lambda-backed custom resources, extending CloudFormation functionality using AWS Lambda. Stack updates and change sets, managing updates to stacks without downtime. Drift detection and remediation, identifying and fixing changes made outside cloud formation. Cross-stack references, sharing resources between stacks. Hands-on activities. Writing CloudFormation templates. Deploying nested stacks. Performing drift detection and remediation. Chapter 5, Automated Account Management and Security in AWS Overview. This chapter explores automating account management and enhancing security using AWS services. Key topics: CloudFormation stack sets, managing resources across multiple accounts and regions. AWS CDK, creating infrastructure using code. AWS App Config, implementing feature flags for application configuration. AWS Control Tower, automating multi-account setup and governance. AWS Detective, enhancing security analysis and threat detection. Hands-on activities. Creating stack sets. Using AWS App Config for feature management. Setting up AWS Control Tower. Chapter 6, Automation using OpsWorks and Elastic Beanstalk. Overview. This chapter focuses on deploying and managing applications using AWS OpsWorks and Elastic Beanstalk. Key topics: Elastic Beanstalk, deploying multi-container Docker applications. OpsWorks, automating application deployment using custom cookbooks. Blue/green deployments, reducing downtime during deployments. AWS SAM, building serverless applications with Lambda and DynamoDB. Hands-on activities. Deploying applications to Elastic Beanstalk. Creating custom cookbooks in OpsWorks. Implementing Canary deployments with AWS SAM. Chapter 7, High Availability, Scalability, and Fault Tolerance. Overview. This chapter covers designing and implementing highly available, scalable, and fault-tolerant architectures. Key topics: RDS multi-OS setup, ensuring database availability during failures. Auto-scaling groups, scaling applications based on demand. Lifecycle hooks, automating actions during scaling events. Load balancing, distributing traffic for high availability. Hands-on activities. Setting up RDS multi-OS. Configuring auto-scaling groups. Stress testing applications. Chapter 8, Disaster Recovery Strategies Overview. This chapter focuses on designing and automating disaster recovery strategies to ensure business continuity. Key topics: S3 cross-region replication, ensuring data availability across regions. AWS DRS, disaster recovery for applications. CloudFront origin failover, high availability for content delivery. Route 53, implementing DNS-based failover. Hands-on activities: configuring S3 replication. Setting up disaster recovery with AWS Doctors, implementing failover with Route 53. Chapter 9, Automate Monitoring and Event Management Overview. This chapter teaches how to automate monitoring and event management using AWS services. Key topics: CloudWatch metrics and logs, custom metrics and log analysis. Event Bridge, automating event-driven workflows. CloudTrail, monitoring API activity for security and compliance. Hands-on activities: creating custom CloudWatch metrics. Integrating Event Bridge with SNS. Querying VPC flow logs in Athena. Chapter 10, Auditing, Logging, and monitoring containers and applications overview. This chapter focuses on auditing and monitoring containerized applications and workloads. Key topics: AWS X-Ray, tracing application requests for debugging. AWS Inspector, running security assessments on EC2 instances. AWS Config, automating compliance checks and remediation. ECS monitoring, tracking container performance. Hands-on activities integrating X-Ray with Lambda. Configuring AWS config rules. Monitoring ECS clusters. Chapter 11, Troubleshooting and Restoring Operations Overview. This chapter provides strategies for troubleshooting and restoring operations during failures. Key topics: Ops Center, aggregating operational tasks. Auto healing, automating recovery in OpsWorks. Dead letter queues, handling failed messages in SQS. CloudFormation troubleshooting, debugging stack creation issues. Hands-on activities using Ops Center for operational tasks. Implementing dead letter queues. Troubleshooting CloudFormation stacks. Chapter 12, Event-Driven Automated Actions Overview. This chapter focuses on automating actions based on events using AWS services. Key topics: Kinesis, building event-driven architectures. AWS Inspector, automating security scans. AWS Guard Duty, visualizing and responding to security findings. Hands-on activities setting up Kinesis for event processing. Automating security scans with AWS Inspector. Visualizing Guard Duty findings. Chapter 13, Governance Strategies and Cost Optimization Overview. This chapter covers governance strategies and cost optimization techniques in AWS. Key topics: AWS Macie, discovering sensitive data. AWS WAF, protecting applications from web attacks. SSM Parameter Store, managing configuration securely. Trusted Advisor, optimizing AWS infrastructure. Hands-on activities configuring AWS Macie for sensitive data discovery. Using Trusted Advisor for cost optimization. Automating administrative tasks with SSM. Chapter 14, Advanced Security, Access Control, and Identity Management. Overview. This chapter focuses on advanced security and identity management techniques. Key topics: AWS Cloud HSM, securing sensitive data with hardware security modules. AWS Directory Service, managing user access. RBAC versus ABAC, role-based versus attribute-based access control. Identity Federation, integrating external identity providers. Hands-on activities. Configuring Cloud HSM for data security. Implementing Identity Federation. Comparing RBAC and ABAC. This comprehensive overview highlights the key topics, hands-on activities, and objectives of chapters 4 through 14, providing a roadmap for mastering AWS DevOps concepts and practices.